15,000 years ago, humans stood at the edge of a huge, unknown land, leaving their homes in Eurasia and crossing a land bridge to modern-day Alaska. What made them leave? Were they looking for food, adventure, or something entirely different? We may never know for sure, but this migration was a major moment in ancient history. As these humans traveled across the land bridge, they started to move south. They spread out across the Americas, settling in different areas and developing their own cultures. For a long time, researchers thought that all Native American groups came from the same ancestors. They believed that these ancestors arrived in the Americas through the land bridge. This theory made sense, and many people accepted it. But recently, some discoveries have challenged this idea, and you won't believe what has been revealed. Before we get right into it, comment below. What do you think is the true history of the Americas? Scientists have found a very surprising connection between some tribes in the Amazon and indigenous Australians and New Guineans. This discovery suggests that these tribes might share a common ancestor, and this ancestor lived way before the migration across the land bridge. If this is really true, then unlike what we've always known about the earliest migrations into the Americas, there were actually two groups of migrants who came to the Americas, not just one. Ever since this realization, researchers have been studying the DNA of ancient humans, trying to piece together the story of how the Americas were populated. It was not until 2008 that a team of researchers finally had the answer. They analyzed DNA from 10,800-year-old feces. Yes, you heard that right. And found that a tribe of ancient humans in the Oregon had ancestral ties to modern Native Americans. This was a breakthrough. But the researchers weren't satisfied. They wanted to know more, so they teamed up with experts in Brazil to collect more clues and figure out the mysterious connection between Native American tribes in the Amazon and people from the South Pacific. They started by gathering DNA samples from 30 Native American tribes in Central and South America. Next, they used 4 different statistical strategies to compare the genomes of these Native American tribes to each other and 197 populations from around the world. As they delved deeper into the data, they made a shocking discovery. 3 uncontacted Amazonian tribes, the Surui, the Cariciana, and the Zavant, share a common genetic thread with modern-day South Americans. But here's the thing. These tribes live in different parts of the Amazon, hundreds of miles apart. They also have distinct cultures and languages. So what's the explanation for this genetic connection? The secrets of the 3 Amazonian indigenous tribes. According to Hunemeyer, a co-author of the study, the genetic similarities between these tribes suggest that there was some kind of mixing or intermarriage between them. But when did this happen? The researchers think this mixing happened over 6,000 years ago, long before these tribes even spoke the same language. Today, the Cariciana and the Surui speak Tupi, while the Zavant speak Jay. The more researchers learned, the more questions they had. Who were these ancient tribes that intermarried and left behind a genetic legacy? What were their cultures like, and how did they live? First is the Surui people, living deep in the Amazon rainforest, completely isolated from the rest of the world. They are one of many uncontacted tribes in the Amazon, with over 100 groups remaining untouched by modern society. The Surui people have had very brief contact with outsiders, and when they did, it was disastrous. Many of them died from illnesses they had no immunity to, like the flu. Now, they face many threats to their survival. Their land is being destroyed by deforestation, logging, and the construction of dams and roads. These activities disrupt their way of life and make it harder for them to survive. So organizations like Survival International are working tirelessly to preserve the Surui people's land and enforce no-contact policies. Next is the Cariciana people. The Cariciana and Zavant people's ancient lifestyles. Like the Surui, they are also an indigenous tribe living in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. They have their own unique culture and language. which is a part of the Tupi language family. The Krishna people call themselves Yiksa, which simply means people. There are around 396 Krishna individuals, mostly living in the Krishna village. They have very unique cultures and myths, particularly about the sun. Yiksha believe Gokip was once a human being who became a god. Traditionally, the Krishna people practice farming, hunting, fishing, and gathering. They grow crops like cassava, corn, and bananas, and eat foods like monkey meat, fish, and fruits. They are skilled at living off the land, and their traditional way of life is simple yet peaceful. But they are not just skilled hunters and gatherers. They are also talented artisans. They create beautiful handicrafts from materials found in the jungle, like palm leaves, feathers, and fibers. While they try hard to stay away from the rest of the world, unfortunately, they also face many challenges, including the destruction of their forest home and the gradual loss of their traditional way of life. Finally, the Zavant people. The history of this indigenous tribe is long and quite complicated, with a story that spans centuries. They were first contacted by outsiders in the 18th century, but they resisted contact and maintained their independence. This was an impressive feat, considering what the Surui people faced during their brief contact with outsiders. After years of holding their own, in the 20th century, the Brazilian government finally took steps to protect the Zavant and their land. This turning point allowed them to maintain their way of life without interference from outsiders. So far, we've learned that although they lived hundreds of miles apart, the Surui, Krishna, and Zavant had some sort of intermarriage that made them end up sharing a common genetic thread with modern-day South Americans. Similar to the Krishna natives, the Zavant people are skilled hunters and gatherers, and they practice agriculture. They have a strong spiritual tradition, and they believe in different spirits and gods. Their language is part of the Zhe language family, and it is spoken by around 15,000 people. But there's so much researchers don't know about the Zavant people. The hidden link between the Amazon and South Pacific. While researchers are able to discover that they share a common ancestor with the Surui and the Krishna, they've also found out that the Zavant tribe share a connection with people living in Australia and New Guinea. But where did this common ancestor come from? Researchers believe that it lived tens of thousands of years ago in Asia. From there, one branch of the family tree moved north to Siberia, while the other spread south to New Guinea and Australia. The northern branch most likely migrated across the land bridge in a separate surge from the Eurasian founders. The researchers have named this hypothetical second group Population Y, or Ipikura, which means ancestor in Tupi, a language spoken by the Surui and the Krishna. The one issue is that researchers don't know when exactly Population Y arrived in the Americas, whether before, after, or at the same time as the first wave of Eurasians. But David Reich, a geneticist at Harvard University, and his research team suspect that the line is fairly old and that at some point Population Y probably mixed with the lineage of Eurasian settlers. Meanwhile, Amazonian tribes are still isolated from many other South American groups. And this is probably why the signal of Population Y is strong in their DNA. While David Reich and his team were knee-deep in solving the mystery of the hidden DNA lineages of the isolated Amazonian tribes, another team of researchers, led by S.K. Villeslav and Manasa Raghavan, has been studying the DNA of Native Americans. They found that Native Americans descend from just one line that crossed the land bridge no earlier than 23,000 years ago. But there's a twist. Although the team didn't study Amazonian tribes in depth, they did find a weak link between Australasians and some South American populations. They think that this link is due to gene flow from Eskimos, not Population Y. This is a problem, because if Population Y had mixed with Eskimos or other groups, we would expect to see genetic clues along the way. But so far, those clues are missing. The only conclusion that currently exists is that both Reich and S.K. Willerslav's studies suggest the ancestry of the first Americans is a lot more complicated than scientists had envisioned. The forest may be dense, but so is our past, and the deeper we dig into our history, the more ancient voices we uncover. There's also always another chapter waiting to be written, another discovery waiting to be made. But thanks to DNA analysis, we now know the connection between 3 isolated tribes in the Amazon and people from the South Pacific. If you want to stay up to date on the latest research-based and proof-backed discoveries like this, then subscribe to our channel because we've got more shocking and exciting updates coming your way.